Okay, guys, you can begin.
Right, so good afternoon, everyone. Our group is doing chapter 4, which is understanding yourself. Myself, Christian Landry Smith and Amy De Freitas. Basically, this chapter challenges you to think of things about yourself that shape your personal identity and fuel your motivation. So, we'll explore the role of self-awareness in leadership, including aspects of self-concept and self-esteem. It explores how you form your values and the roles of values in developing character. So your personality preferences for how you approach decisions and how you learn also. So the beginning is development of self for leadership. So there are many movies that portray where a character must look within to see themselves for who they truly are, what their strengths are and their weaknesses, what they can do but are afraid to do. So in Star Wars, the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit movies, as well as a recent movie, Inside Out, there were instances that were filled with deeper meaning behind the adventurous entertainment, moments where the main characters, along with other individual characters which helped the main character, were portrayed as discouraged and seeing weakness as a negative thing. The journey of these individuals pretty much provided self awareness of identifying abilities, strengths, and their weaknesses. When a leader knows that they can be wrong and others can be right, someone else's idea may be better than yours. It's always good to know when our leader should also always know when a life is worth taking or when it is worth saving. In those action movies, killing someone doesn't necessarily always mean it's the right thing to do. Sometimes sparing them is the honorable and the leader like way to do. um when there's no easy way to becoming a leader, it takes work. So working on yourself to be better. It doesn't matter if you're born with immense talent, as you said in a previous presentation. You're not born a leader, you make leaders. So this journey will develop a sense of trust in yourself once you make that one big step or change to discover who you truly are. And after that, you pretty much will never be the same. So a quote was, "It is of great importance to recognize one's strengths and weaknesses because only then can one realize one's capability and limitations." So recognizing capacity allows leaders to commit themselves in such a way as to utilize their capability. What are you pretty much capable of? Recognizing limitations allows for humility and acknowledges that leaders cannot succeed at everything. So on a team sport or in a group project, one member, they cannot do everything themselves or they can't be good at everything. And you realizing that you need help from others to perform task or achieve a goal is one of the main steps in realizing. So a common observation of many acknowledges is that no one can teach you about yourself except for you. So friends, family, advisors, counselors, therapists, and lecturers and teachers, they can all help with this process of self-awareness, but in the end, it all depends on you. So you have 4 lessons to develop self knowledge, right? So you are your own best teacher, as I was just talking about. So who's the best teacher to teach yourself about you is you, because well, who knows you better than yourself? Accept responsibility and well, not to blame anyone. So blaming others for your own downfall or for not being good at something, that does not ever solve anything or bring a sense of understanding of that you as an individual can feel as well. You can learn anything you want to learn. Oh, a little typo there, my bad. Once you set your mind to it, you could learn whatever you want in this life. No one should ever tell you you can't do this or you can't learn this if you never try. And well, true understanding comes from reflection of your own experience. So reflect on your good and bad experiences in life, in situations that you've been in. See what you did right, see what you did wrong, see what could have been better, because there's nothing wrong with reflecting. If you don't reflect on what you did wrong, you might end up repeating it. And what you did good, you might forget about it. You might not ever do it again. So leadership means self-discovery, right? So getting a better yield out of your attributes. In your life, you have probably learned to set goals, motivate yourself to meet them. Unfortunately, me personally, I do not set goals, which is a poor thing, which I wish I could change and I probably should change. And when you set these goals and reach your goals, you feel a sense of what's the word? A sense of gratitude. You feel accomplished, and when you don't achieve them or not, don't even motivate yourself or set goals, you feel responsible for not even trying. Unfortunately, it's hard for some people to translate life skills of self-control and internal motivation into guides of action as members of a group. You know, you might often sit in a group meeting and be like, well, in a Trinidad, like, hey, in Trinidad, if you're in a meeting, be like, nah, that's not my job. I don't want to study that. I don't business about that. It's their job. They go do it. That means you need to develop more self-leadership skills. Your decision to be a person who can make a difference is a statement about self-leadership. You cannot credit or blame external factors such as teachers, supervisors, parents, or positional leaders for your motivation or for your own downfall. Unfortunately, yeah, in this life, as cruel as it is, there may be acts of discrimination or oppression that have held you back. But you need to, I don't want to offend anyone, you need to look forward ahead and ask, like, what can I do to matter? Or what can I do to make a difference? The things that are important to me. So your strengths and weaknesses. So each individual has and brings a different mix of strengths and weaknesses to the table. Of course, they all have some individuals who have similar strengths and weaknesses, but everyone's strengths and weaknesses is unique to them. The irony, though, is that some of the strengths that some individuals may possess, if overemphasized, can become their weaknesses, and some weaknesses actually may be seen as strength to others. You may be a strong critical thinker who can readily find flaws in logic. That'll be terrific in helping a group prepare for a presentation and present the position of topics, or it could be seen as a negative and blocking if someone is presenting an idea to you naturally and you begin to be critical instead of trying to connect, to listen, understand what they are trying to present. The reverse can be true as well. So to be humble and quiet may mean your opinion is never heard and your voice is left out of the decision making. But it can also mean you are a keen listener who is very tuned into others' thoughts and their reaction to ideas. Other strengths and weaknesses, loyalty. You can back an individual who you may have known for many years and trust with your life. Unfortunately, some may view that as favoritism or you being biased to their point of view of their presentation. Another one could be control. You may like to take charge of a situation when no one wants to step up and lead the way. Unfortunately, some may view it as being bossy or domineering, like instead of being a leader, you're being a boss, which no one unfortunately likes. So what you may need to do is you need to identify your passions and your strengths. So pay attention to things you see others doing, and in the inside of your mind, you're thinking to yourself, oh, I wouldn't mind trying to do that. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, it's sometimes difficult to identify their strengths. You need to observe and listen for times when you tell yourself, I feel accomplished or I feel pretty good about myself after doing, let's say you did 10 pull-ups and you never thought you could, and you feel pretty good doing that. Or you read a book in a week and you feel pretty good accomplishing that goal. So they have these strategies that are recommended to find your strength. So listen to yourself. When you have done something well, even if no one has noticed, celebrating in silence always goes a long way. Identifying the satisfaction you feel when you know something you did was terrific, and it gives you a feeling of well-being. This is where people tell you endorphins of the drug that everyone craves for. I, for one, actually do crave those drugs of endorphins, not the other kinds. knowing what things you find easy to learn quickly. So, like, let's say, organizing your lab report, talking to strangers, mastering a new computer technology, reading patiently to a small child. You should always celebrate these small victories that you can do pretty easily. So study your success for clues of excellence, for glimpses of what can be excellent, for things you could pretty much do well. Whether it is giving a speech or helping someone feel very special, by examining whatever your success has been, you will discover that you can do well. So think about your patterns of excellence. When you are able to sing every word of a song you enjoy in a car ride or with your friends, when you're able to grasp the deeper meaning in a complicated class lecture, or when you practice a skill, whether it be cooking, playing football, public speaking, or learning a new language, and you feel it improve each time that you do it. So, like, you want to see the clues to your strengths that are all around you, like identify and label what you were doing or what you were thinking or how you were feeling before you were able to accomplish. It frames your confidence and self-esteem. The next one is developing your talent. So one of our greatest assets as human beings is our talent. Everyone has it. Knowing yourself includes knowing your talents, things that you are naturally good at. Could be cooking, public speaking, you're athletic, you're good at motivating people, you're good at rallying a team, you're good at, could be simple as organizing a desk or cleaning, anything. Unfortunately, we often work from the deficit model, which is we focus on and maybe obsess about our weaknesses. I can't do this, I can't do that. Unfortunately, some people obsess over their weaknesses over their entire life and they never get to develop their craft, which is developing and working on their strengths. Trying to fix our weakness takes away from the ability to lead and work from our talents and strengths. We sometimes think, I'm good at, let's say, I'm good at running. I don't need to practice that. I'll just always be good at it. It's always good to improve and work on what you're good at. We do not have, unfortunately, have enough time in our lifetime to fix everything about ourselves. So effective leaders, they know what they do best and apply their strengths in all aspects of their lives. Of course, this does not mean to ignore your weaknesses, instead you should be aware that what your weakness is and manage it so that you can be more productive and more fulfilled. One strategy of managing your weaknesses is surround yourself with others who have talents that are different from yours. In a team, you don't want a team with individuals who all have similar strengths. Let's say everyone is good at researching, but no one is good at public speaking. It's always good to have people who have different strengths. One is good at public speaking, one is good at researching, one is good at critical thinking, one is good at organizing everyone's ideas. Sorry. When you play to your strengths, you're working from the philosophy of talent, two assumptions that can guide you in your leadership. Each person's talents are enduring and unique, Like I was saying earlier, everyone is unique in their own way. Yeah, some may have the similar talents, some may have similar strengths, but in a way, it's always different and unique to each individual. Each person's greatest room for growth is in the areas of his or her strengths. So even though you may be good at public speaking, practicing and working on ways to improve it or better yourself is always a good tool. Too often we believe that our best strategy to grow and develop is to improve our weaknesses. The real tragedy of life is not that each of us doesn't have enough or any strengths. It is that we fail to use those ones while we are busy worrying about our weaknesses. Right, so the from the chapter, a very powerful metaphor. It's called Don's theory of dipper and the bucket. So let's say everyone in here has a invisible bucket that gets filled or emptied on a regular basis by the invisible dipper. So when your bucket gets emptied, you feel negative, let down, depressed. But when your bucket is full, you feel positive, you feel delighted, you feel like you can accomplish anything, you can rule the world. So the dipper is a powerful tool in leadership. It allows us to fill another's bucket by saying positive things. and focusing on what the person is good at, words of encouragement, and motivating them, achievements, awards. These are things that can help fill an individual's bucket. You can also use the dipper to dip from someone's bucket, making them feel diminished, degrading an individual or blaming them or always coming down on them and saying they're not good enough. That tends to remove from your bucket. Of course, think about what you do best. Then think about how you felt when you received recognition for a job well done. You were probably motivated to continue doing what you did because you were good at it and you enjoyed doing it. Like, I know if Say was to give me an A on this, I would feel pretty motivated to do much better on another presentation. Joking, I wish. So research has shown that when you have opportunities to do what you are best at doing, and when you're recognized for doing that, you experience a more meaningful and more satisfaction in what you are doing, and your productivity tends to increase as a result. So one of the things that people have a hard time doing is we not sure how to manage our weaknesses. So a lot of us can learn how to do that. Some of us think that weaknesses can be removed or they can be transformed into strengths. So what we need to do instead is we need to manage our weaknesses so the strengths can be free to develop and become so powerful that your weakness is pretty much irrelevant. A person can either manage weaknesses so that they do not repress other strengths or overcome them and turn them into strengths. So they've had many famous individuals in life who've had weaknesses that they've had to manage. You have Tom Cruise, Orlando Bloom, Keanu Reeves, Pablo Picasso, Thomas Edison. All these individuals had a form of dyslexia. They struggled to be quick readers or accurate spellers, but they all learned to manage those weaknesses and found ways to prevent them from blocking their strengths. Tom Cruise himself stated he had to train himself to focus his attention. He became a very visual and learned how to create mental images in order to comprehend what he read. A famous footballer that you all may know, Lionel Messi. He was a shy individual. He kept to himself, but he used football to do his speaking for him. Others cope with different weaknesses. They have Helen Keller. She could not see, hear, nor speak, but she learned to communicate remarkably well. You have Olympic athletes who deal with asthma, but are still able to compete. Whatever the weakness is, gifted people learn to manage their weaknesses so they don't hold them back. You should focus on your strengths and develop your craft. Some weaknesses, however, they may be problematic because they cause you to function poorly. They need to be tackled directly. For example, may not be well at speaking in front of a crowd. You can manage this by learning ways to make a presentation more comfortable for you, like using overhead transparencies or handouts, or encouraging group interaction. Me personally, honestly, I hate to present. I get nervous. I say a bunch of nonsense. But I realize the best thing that I could do was I normally try to be the first person or first group to present. Gives me the idea. It's like, all right, let me just go out here and get it over with. I don't want to be the fifth group or the sixth group or whichever group. And I'm just there waiting and worrying and overthinking and becoming more nervous until the countdown that it's my time to present that I freeze or stutter and I'm not sure what to do. Another thing is esteem and confidence. So there's a story from John Gardner. He's sitting beside Martin Luther King at a seminar on education. And the first presentation was a speech entitled, First Teach Them to Read. Now, of course, after observing this title, Martin Luther King said to him, First teach them to believe in themselves. So what I got from this was an individual needs to believe in themselves before they can have any hope of achieving anything. If you don't believe in yourself, who else is going to believe in you? How you think and feel about yourself is the energy the energy that fuels your motivation. Self-concept is how we objectively describe ourselves. Usually it is based on our roles and attributes. You know, someone might say, I'm a mother of two and I like to go with the flow and keep all my opinions open. Another might say, I'm an older than typical student, while everyone else is a bunch of teenagers. I'm here in my 20s, 30s, 40s, maybe even 50s or 60s, with an above average intelligence and high motivation. Self esteem is the subjective element of how you feel about yourself. For example, I'm a creative person with musical abilities, but I'm unskilled socially and uncomfortable around those in authority. However, I feel proud of my music and creative skills and feel disappointed in myself for not being more socially skilled. Having self awareness would lead to having an accurate self concept. Honoring your strengths and developing your weaknesses are essential, the first steps towards higher self esteem. So, high self esteem is a result of valuing your self concept. Low self esteem may mean you expect something better or different than you feel. So, let's say you have a 3.3 grade GPA as a bio major and have a group of supportive friends and have been elected vice president of your campus. You may feel proud and have high regard for those accomplishments. However, if you're an individual who's been working for a 3.9 or 4.0 GPA and you want to go to medical school, you may feel bad and down on yourself and beat up yourself and saying, I can't do this. Your standards, of course, is always different to someone else. Everyone has their own standards. Self-confidence is the ability to know that you can rely on your strengths and competencies and skills in the many contexts in which you find yourself. Some people constantly do well in whatever they do, but they are never sure they can do well and therefore have low self confidence. These individuals always question themselves. Nothing you say, nothing wrong in saying that you can actually do better. But accepting ourselves is perhaps one of the hardest life tasks. Realizing that you cannot change some things about yourself is a step towards higher self-esteem. So, for example, me, I'm 6'2". I don't mind. I understand there are some people who, they may be 5'2" or 5'6". They wish they were taller. Unfortunately, that's something you cannot change. You cannot change. You cannot become another race. Though in this day and age, with what people are doing, I'm not sure if that's true anymore. Can't change your siblings or get rid of your freckles. Can't get rid of your weird bone structure. You have big feet, big eyes, big mouth, whichever. Unfortunately, can't change that. But you can learn new skills to add to your knowledge base. If some aspects of yourself are negative influences on your self-esteem, you must differentiate between those you can actually do something about and those you just need to think about differentially, which can lead to a higher level of self-acceptance. So perceiving things differently is called cognitive reframing. It's a different way of thinking. You may have felt bad when thinking of your personality as shy and quiet, but you might feel empowered to frame those same characteristics as thoughtful and reflective. People used to think Lady Gaga was strange or weird, and they used to bully her for how she used to dress and how the songs she used to sing, but she never let that bother her. She viewed it from a different way. I'm special, I'm different from everyone else, which could be a good thing. So understand yourself, what makes you who you are, right? How much of your perception, values, temperament, personality, and motives come from the way you were raised, the influences who you surrounded yourself when you were younger and still do? How much of the way you are is through genetics, or were you just raised that way? Becoming aware of your influence of either nature or nature in your own development is essential to understanding yourself. So, for example, you may be a tall individual, and may have learned that some people find you imposing. They assume you'll be outgoing and aggressive, even though you could be a quiet and shy individual. You may be small, but I've learned that people react differently, react eventually to the quality of what you have to say. Some might even say you seem bigger than your height. Regardless of how you came to be the way you are, you can intentionally choose to develop desired traits or skills. Cannot change your height, of course, as I said before, or some other genetic attribute, but you can develop, sorry, you can address many of the things you have learned by bringing them into your awareness. You can manage your look and how you carry yourself. Is he a slob, or does he dress well? Does he carry himself? Does he stand up tall, chest out, yada yada? You can develop your speaking skills. The ability to lead or rally a group. Although you cannot always change the way others view you because they bring their own biases and attributions, you can at least be authentic as you try to be the person you would like to be. So discussing your self-awareness is a form of psychological study of individuality. If you feel uncomfortable with the concept of individuality, it could be because describing human perception or behavior in categories or types makes you feel boxed in or stereotyped. You may feel constrained or categorized. You may also feel uncomfortable because focusing on your own needs or on yourself is considered selfish or inappropriate in your family or culture. It may feel like we do not fit in, but everyone is special and unique in their own way. By knowing how others respond, you can access how their response is like or unlike your own. So let's say there was a death in your family or the loss of someone you love or someone you know. You may find comfort in knowing that there are predictable stages in grief process for many, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, right? Nobody grieves the same. Someone who, some people who I know, they've had a loss in their family. Some of them, they mourn, they cry for weeks, months. Others who I know, in a day or two, they look like they're absolutely fine. Of course, they probably are mourning in their own way at home in private, but out in public, they continue on as if nothing has even changed. So the factors that shape your identity, right? So you have several central salient characteristics that have probably made you the person you are and the person that you will become as you age. So consider how your ethnic, racial, or cultural background has made a difference and shaped the way how you are and how you act. How and what you believe or how and why you have behave differently because you are a man or woman. How you carry yourself, your responses to people, how you view an individual. How is your sexual orientation influence your attitudes and behaviors? How does your age influence your interests and views? People say, um, I know every generation always says, oh, this music, this generation sucks, yada, yada, yada. Generation music back in my day was so much better. Um, do you have specific abilities or disabilities that shape your perception or skills? Some people who have a hard time, who are deaf or blind, they view life in a different manner. How was your birth order position, your family influence your development? Are you a younger child, or the oldest? Are you the middle child? Depending which one you are, can depend on how you grew up and how you began to view life. What significant roles you have that bring responsibilities in, sorry, what significant roles you have that bring responsibilities that shape your decision, being a son or daughter, being a, oh, sorry, being a volunteer, a parent, or an office manager. Um, how's your family's socioeconomic status influence your development and your views of leadership? You know, we believe the capacity of leadership is right in each and every. Sorry, that was the wrong thing. Values, beliefs, ethics, and character, right? So, as difficult as it may be to determine how characteristics like your gender, ethnicity, or religion influence the way you think and act, it is even more complicated and important to identify the values and beliefs that lead to your ethical behaviors and build your character. So, among the hardest things to articulate are the values that guide action. So, if your actions and thoughts are a mystery to you, you may not have adequately examined your own value system. So, beliefs shape values and which influence thoughts and actions. If you can articulate your values, then you are likely aware of principles and beliefs that guide you. Um, Knowing that you have preferences in how you construct your value system should help you understand yourself and others better. No one process is preferred over others, you know, right? The discussion of value should always raise this crucial question: whose values and for what purpose? Some values, such as promise, keeping nonviolence, are so fundamental that they have been found to be norms in most civilized societies. I will now pass you on to my partner. Ha.
Hi, so character and ethical behavior. Integrity is one of the many key components needed for persons in an ethic group to work towards achieving change. Likewise, authenticity or credibility is the true core of your character that
Question.
pulls others.
Hold on, Amy.
Uh,
Amy, stop. Question, you need to stop your end. All right, Amy, go ahead.
right, so likewise, authenticity or credibility is the true core of your character that pulls others who wants to make a difference and willing to serve a cause. A person of this character personifies ethical decision making and expects ethical and behavior from others. Next slide. There are 6 pillars of character that endure to ethical leadership practices. These are trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. Next slide. Trustworthiness. Being worthy of trust means being honest, showing integrity, keeping your promises, and being loyal, which means that despite all odds, you know to stand up for your own wrongdoings, which also implies telling the truth. Next slide. Respect. Having respect means having consideration for others and their personal opinions and views on things. However, it does not imply that you should always agree with them, but to treat them with ways that aren't advantageous towards them. Next, responsibility. Having accountability for your actions, being aware to decide not to act, pursuing excellence, and exercising self restraint is key to being a responsible leader. Next, fairness. Being open minded and willing to listen to others, not being biased to influence your decision making, is what having fairness in your character is about. Next slide. Caring. Caring requires you to have empathy and kindness towards others. It shows sorry. It shows that you are aware of others' feelings, not being hurtful towards them by being concerned for their well-being. Next, citizenship. Being a citizen means you have responsibilities as a member of the community to contribute to the well-being of the group and the environment. You are also willing to abide by laws and social obligations. Having leadership means wait, next slide please. Sorry. Having leadership means having a special kind of belief in yourself to set moral and ethical values in your decision making in life. Next, personal style preferences. Next slide. When you observe how you interact and make decisions, it helps you to truly know yourself and your preferences in how you bring about yourself to others and how they perceive you as a person. You may want to you may want the best for others and think you are helping and caring. However, people may not see it as that. Next, psychological type. Next slide. Every person adapts differently to their surroundings and with their personality preferences. When you spend a vast majority of time doing things a certain way, how you interact with people, the way you make decisions or view life and your beliefs, it's hard to imagine life doing things differently. When you realize that you have the capacity to broaden your approaches, you have to identify how you approach things. Next slide. Carl Jung, 1923, identified four core functions of human adaptation. He calls personality archetypes and temperament types. Next slide. How we relate to the world, perceive the world, make judgments, and make decisions are all part of the function of adaptation. There are four pairs of adaptive orientations that are diametrically opposed to each other. These are extrovert or introvert, where we get our energy, sensing, intuiting, how we gather information from the world around us, feeling, thinking, how we prefer to process that information, and judging and perceiving people, how we prefer to make decisions. Next, so introverts versus extroverts. So extroverts succeed and do best when thinking out loud and interacting with others. They are the sociable beings and gain energy when around people. They will explore beyond what they generally need just to know more about what's going on around them. They prefer the outer world of people and things. Introverts prefer to reflect and think things through before presenting their personal opinion on things and do their best work through internal reflection while gaining energy from creating private space, even in crowded scenarios. Interacting with a crowd may drain them of energy, even though they do well in interactive settings and may need time for themselves afterwards. Introverts like to be more organized and prepared for every situation because it's hard for them to just go with the flow and not have something planned to say, or it will drain them even more. The terms extrovert and introvert can be rather perplexed because extroverts aren't outgoing and introverts aren't shy or withdrawn because these terms instead are just a preferred orientation to the outer world or inner world. Next slide, please. Sensing and intuiting. Sensing people rely on the five senses and prefer concrete facts and details. They are practical and realistic, preferring the present or past over the future. Intuiting people refer the big picture and rather see things as a whole. They are innovative people and use imagination to develop many possibilities. Intu- sorry, my throat was dry. Intuitive people live in an anticipation about the future and how they can improve and change. Examples between sensing and intuitive people. Sensing people might say, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Whereas with intuitive, People might say there has to be a better way. This is a quote by Macaulay, 1990. The difference can have a lot of misunderstandings. For example, when one person says, wait a minute, we need more information before we decide, or what do the rules in in the student handbook say? Sorry. The other person might say, we cannot know everything and we are close enough to have an idea of what might work. Let's just give it a try and see what happens. Groups need both grounded people and people who think of possibilities to enhance more possibilities and different point of views. Next slide. Thinking and feeling. People who prefer thinking use logic and rationality. They use critical thinking, analysis, and reliance on the objective scientific method. These types of people excel in school systems. Feeling type of people prefer to make judgments and base themselves on the importance of human value and beliefs with emphasis on personal friendships. People who prefer feeling may find thinkers are cold and too objective, whereas thinkers would find feelers too emotional and unable to stand firm on a decision. Sorry, sir, my throat is all dry. Sorry.
That's okay. You have some water there?
Yeah. Um, Statistics show that men make up to 60% of thinking group and women make up 60% of feeling type of group. These gender differences may actually reflect personality differences. Next slide, please. Judging versus perceiving. People with judging preferences prefer order with emphasis on resolving issues and making decisions to create order. They seek more closure. They like clear beginnings, deadlines, and endings. Perceiving. These types of people are more open-minded by gathering as much information as they can and being flexible. Um, Judging people are more close-minded or driven, whereas perceiving people may seem unfocused and have a hard time getting anything done. Throughout your lifetime, you will develop your personal preference and find your comfort in how you understand and judge your world. We can and do use all eight of the processes, however, we generally tend to use a preferred consistent pattern. For example, you are right-handed, however, you can write with your left hand. If you had to, but you prefer, wait, sorry, you can write with your left-handed if you had to, but you prefer your right hand. If you're an introvert, you can enjoy interacting in conversations with others, but you would need time for yourself to think through what you want to say. It, it is definitely a skill to acquire when using unpreferred strategies when you can comfortably do so while understanding the impact of your preference. A best known method of assessing Jungian can't pronounce it, sorry. Personality types is the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, MBTI. The MBTI is used to understand relationships in a leadership setting. Research shows when using MBTI that 65 to 75% of the general population are extroverts and that women are slightly higher than men in this study. Introverts tend to more go into fields of study such as science and among careers such as university teaching. Those who prefer sensing are 3 times more prevalent in population than intuitives. These intuitive people are more educators, consultants, and student leaders. Approximately two-thirds of women prefer feeling. However, majority of women who are graduate students, engineering students, and business executives prefer the thinking approach. Men in arts, counseling, and some health fields, those with feeling preferences predominate. In the general population, 55% contains judging types, but studies of leaders show this to range upward to 91%. But studies show it can change up to 91%. Leaders come from different groupings. However, certain preferences may show more strengths in some careers or fields than others. McCurley asserts, from the type perspective, one would not ask the question, what type is the best leader? Rather, one would ask, how does each type show leadership? The theory of psychological type The theory of psychological type has been used in leadership assessments to understand the process of self, others, the dynamics of relationship, and leadership, but it has its flaws. It is indicated that it is not stable because you can change your pattern over time. The MBTI are occasionally used inappropriately, usually in hiring decisions, when assuming someone can't be different from their four-letter score, when they can be used several preferences. Self-exploration and understanding yourself is a great way in knowing your personality preferences. It helps you to move further towards self-awareness as it grows you to become more indulged in other skills and decision making with others. You get a realization that there may be a clash in different preferences when encountering conflict with another, and it helps you understand how to relate more. You find it comfortable to say things like, sorry, I know it seems like I am jumping the gun, but I just do my best thinking out loud. Or, I know I'm asking lots of detailed questions, but it helps me to understand the bigger picture. Or, these were interesting ideas presented today. I am just not yet ready to decide. I need to think about this overnight. Can we decide at our meeting tomorrow? Next slide. Approaches of leadership. Leadership is focused more on accomplishing something and changing something. How individuals understand the need for change and how individuals and groups adapt to change is a learning process. It takes time for people to adapt in changing conditions, whether imposed or induced. There are learning applications for Jungian types. The use of MBTI would bring complex understanding of the four codes. Next slide. EI, which is extrovert and introvert, SN, sensing and intuition, TF, thinking, feeling, JP, perceiving, judging. If you're an, if you're an extrovert, you enjoy group learning and discussions as well as doing tasks and projects. You think aloud and express your views confidently. If you are introverted, you tend to more listen and observe while carrying a great dialogue in your head. You do well in writing assignments when you have time to reflect and think. If you are a sensing learner, you prefer facts, details, and prefer inductive thinking. You also value history of an issue so you can establish the context better and learn more on it. If you're an intuitive learner and you like to see the bigger picture of things and you don't do well with knowledge of small details, you may find yourself jumping into conclusions with not many information, like possibility thinking from the diverse sources. Sensing or intuitive preference may relate to a preference of either inductive or inductive ways of thinking. Next slide. Next slide. Inductive versus inductive, deductive versus inductive. Deductive means you like seeing the bigger picture, and inductive is when you like to build up to the bigger picture or conclusion by perceiving by piecing together the parts to involve your conclusion. For example, you may prefer to see a tree before you look at the whole forest. These different learners may find it hard to get one another because of how deductive learners need to see an end result when inductive don't. Groups that are composed of one predominant type of learning preference will find strengths in including other approaches to enrich the outcome. However, if you are not in a similar style of learning, you will have a difficult time benefiting the group with your suggestions and opinions. Oh, next slide, and next slide, next slide. Right. People of highly diverse groups of learning should acknowledge that everyone learns differently and can offer different opinions that will appeal the diversity of the group. Next slide. For example, student government organizations who are planning a retreat during which goals and plans for the year are to be set might send out materials ahead of time, appealing to introverts and intuitors. Plan large group presentations, appealing to introverts and the thinkers. Plan small group discussions, useful for the extroverts and feelers. Plan case study applications. Next slide. They may work through how a possible goal might be put into an action plan with a related budget, useful to the censors and judges. It is helpful to know your own preferred learning style and understanding that others learn differently as well. The Jones approach may help how we relate and take in information and explore your own personality and attitudes in new and advanced ways. Next slide. So, thank you for listening to chapter 4, and I hope you all understand yourself now and how to understand yourself. So, thank you for listening.
All right, are there any questions that people would like to ask? Well, if not, I'm going to stop the recording now.